And we're live.
Hello!
La, la, la. Hello, all. Welcome. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And there's going to be some very interesting commentary on our live stream tonight.
Oh, yes. Sure. We'll have some interesting people.
Yeah.
We'll get some interesting folks. I like it.
How do you feel about World War III? I'm getting ready to hunker down and never see light again.
I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. And I'm still not sure exactly where it's going to be, but I really do think it's like, because we still need to remember what's going on in Northern Africa. Like that's not, that hasn't escaped me either. So it's like, you've got Northern Africa, Israel, Ukraine, and that's not it, because we're still sitting there poking at China left and right. So I don't know. I feel like this whole thing is like a precursor to getting us in a war with Iran. That's basically how I view this whole thing.
That's always been
with Israel.
Yeah, that's always been sort of the goal here, and that ultimately is what it's always been the end game, because the end game is to completely take over the Middle East and drain all of the resources for ourselves. But this is not good. This is very This is very bad, because as much as the propaganda has worked for a long time, and it's working, on people locally, but not to the degree that you would think. Israel is acting with complete impunity at this point. They are not just going after Gaza. And
Israel's been acting with impunity for a long time.
By the way, Israel has killed over 3,000 Palestinian civilians this weekend. So that's just the start. They're also bombing Syria, and they're bombing Lebanon. All it's going to take is either China or Russia to get involved. And apparently, we are already getting our troops ready to head to Israel.
Oh, my God.
World War III. This is why I've said that Biden is a dangerous commander-in-chief, and I've been saying it for a long time, because he's not doing anything in this moment.
No, but let us not forget that it was, in fact, Trump that decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem and really began, between him being in office and Netanyahu being in office, you've had this complete fanning of flames that's been going on. And so then Joe gets in, and instead of doing anything about it, he just continues with it. Like at best, his administration has ignored how much prodding that the previous administration had done, and just sort of let it sit there festering, which is clearly a problem.
So before we bring on our esteemed guest, we want you all to see, we're going to do a replay right now for about 4 minutes right before Vaush gets here. This is going to be a replay of what Jen decided to organize almost a year ago. And in fact, actually, the 1-year anniversary of Deconstructing Zionism panel was October 22nd, 2022.
Really?
So we are almost at the 1-year
You always
anniversary.
know the dates. It's so funny.
So it's just interesting that it happens at this very moment. So what we're going to do now is play you guys a video of what happened a year ago, more or less foretelling what was coming. So hope you all enjoy it.
You know, I'm an historian of the United States. I'm an American historian. Zionism, as you know, is an international movement, has been always. So the American branch of that movement, I think, should be understood as part of this larger global movement. But it also, of course, in the United States, was very much shaped by the specific conditions and traditions and experiences of American Jews.
So there were people, anti-imperialist people, the Paul Robesons, the W.E.B. Du Bois, and others who spoke about Zionism and the problematic nature of Zionism pretty early on. We had people like Malcolm X, who visited Palestine in the early 60s and wrote about it, wrote a column called On Zionist Logic, I believe. It was called. But support for the Palestinian people, for their human rights, has always been a mainstay of the Black radical tradition.
Some people in the Zionist movement have always said, well, this is just part of Judaism, the hope for the formation, or as they would put it, the restoration of a Jewish kingdom or a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael. But as a matter of historical fact, you're correct that the Zionist movement arose in the late 19th century in Europe. It started in Central Europe, just as you say, although it first gained a real mass base further east in Eastern Europe, where the Jewish population of Europe was concentrated.
And I also laid out why Israel is indeed an apartheid government. And to do that, I cited because apartheid is actually a crime. It's a definable crime. And so I cited the United Nations, the International Criminal Court. I quoted them. I quoted Israeli law that was obviously fulfilled those criteria for apartheid. I cited international human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. I cited Palestinian human rights organizations. I quoted and cited B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights organization. I was leaving for the day. The producers called me, said, yeah, just want you to hear it from me. The higher ups at the Hill saw your radar, saw your monologue, and they're not going to be running it. And I asked why. She said, oh, there's a policy I didn't know about. It's a new policy where we don't do, at the Hill, we don't do op-eds, video or written op-eds on Israel. I thought that was weird. So I said, so can I talk about it on my segment tomorrow? And they said, check your email. And that's when I got an email from someone at the Hill saying, we won't be needing you to come in to do your segment tomorrow. Please send any unpaid invoices. Best of luck.
There's still an element of like, this is that sort of third rail issue. No matter what happens, you can talk, you know, there's space at outlets to like very little space, but in the narrow parameters that exist in corporate media, there's space to talk about diplomacy in Ukraine. You know, there's some space to talk about, I mean, I don't know. There's space to like a little bit of space to criticize NATO. Like all of these taboo issues don't necessarily get you fired. Like I just can't think of people who are getting fired the way that Katie was fired from The Hill, the way that Mark Lamont Hill was fired from CNN, the way that there was this actually reporter for the New York Times in Gaza who was recently let go. And it's really unclear why, but it's likely due to like an editorial decision that by like a pro-Israel person who was in a position to push that.
I think Bernie's words were, we have to respect the humanity of the Palestinians. Yeah. And there was this huge uproar, you know, on both sides. Right. I remember I have at the time a Palestinian friend of mine said, this is how bad things are for us, that simply mentioning that we're human beings causes this much of an uproar. You know, yeah. Just the simple fact of acknowledging their humanity. And that so we have to keep some perspective that, yes, it was a breakthrough, but it was a breakthrough just by mentioning that they happen to be human.
Right.
So that was a nice little recap of our original Deconstructing Zionism event. We had several panels throughout it. And we've done a few episodes since that I've sort of stuck in that category. So like if you were to be on our page and look at Deconstructing Zionism, you'd probably find a whole bunch of things that we've talked about. This is very important to me.
But extremely foretelling in many ways.
It is foretelling. I mean, this is not new. None of this is really new. The only thing that's new is this sort of shock and awe that it was able to happen the way that this happened. But none of this is new. But yeah, we've been talking about the Zionism issue for a long time, and my sort of, I guess, progression on that.
Well, you've progressed a lot faster than a lot of people have.
It's taken a while. No, I mean, it's been over the process of about 10 years.
Well, we have somebody to speak with about this topic, and this probably is...
you make it sound like he's an expert on this.
No one's an expert.
No.
We're just well-read, and we try to be as informed as we can be. And he's pretty informed.
He's very informed.
We don't have to agree on everything, but we sure as hell agree on this. Vaush, welcome back to Generational Change.
I resent the implication that I'm not a subject matter expert on this. Do you know how much drama I've been in over my opinions on the subject? My goodness.
Oh, considering how much time you spend, I can only imagine.
I think you get into so much trouble, and I still, to this day, and this is, I've told you, I don't see what the issue is. You never come off mean. You never come off hostile. I don't understand why. It's like they just cannot grasp that you might not say something they agree with. Like,
well, I try not to. I've definitely had a few moments. My initial Twitch ban was actually a product of me not being able to contain my rage at the injustice inflicted on the Palestinian people by Israel. So we've been moderating the tone with which I discuss this issue a little bit as time has gone on.
Yeah, have you? Well, we got demonetized not that long ago, which was kind of sad for us because it wasn't like we were making big money, but we were at least able to have something. This is what happens. But this is always one of those issues that is very, let's just say what do you call it? The algorithm is not friendly to us. It does not like the subject matter and how we cover things. But I recall you did something that was very impressive to me a while back, which was when you did like a huge fundraiser for Palestinian children. And I was very, very impressed with both your ability to raise that kind of money by playing video games for nonstop, however long that was, but just that this is your take. And I'm curious where you came to that. Because like, I'm tribe, so I was raised very Zionist, and it's taken me a while to get to where I am. But so I'm kind of curious, like where you came to this is obviously important to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually, I grew up in Beverly Hills. That's my proletarian origin story. Beverly Hills, of course, is full of Persian Jews, but they're not the hyper Zionist kind of Jew. For the most part, because they're Persian Jews. They, a lot of them came over after the Iranian Revolution. And as a consequence of that, there's like a very slight cultural shift that's evident, I think, in issues relating to Israel. Most of the Jewish kids that I grew up with was because like my higher friend circle, like everyone I knew, basically, Israel just didn't come up that much, not just because you only talk politics so much when you're a kid, but also because to a lot of them, it seemed like this kind of like tangential thing, like this side issue, like, oh, maybe it's fine, maybe it's not. There were only a couple of people who I remember being sort of obnoxiously Zionist while I was growing up. But I think since most of the friends that I had at the time had left-leaning inclinations, I think I just never really got a positive spin on Israel, like ever growing up. Like it was always neutral or negative. And then you get older and you learn more about history and then it just gets more and more negative. But I never really had that like initial sort of tainting of the well.
Yeah, that's it. My husband grew up in Southern California. He's from Hidden Hills and Jewish family. And yet he wasn't raised like I was raised here. And even among the Jewish population, and that's Ashkenazi Jews even. But like Persian Jews, I think, are they considered Sephardic Jews? Are they Mizrahi Jews? What kind of Jews are those?
They like big white pillars. That's all I know.
I don't think that's well, no, but it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize that in Israel, while people think it's about Jews, it's only about certain Jews. It's about white Ashkenazi Jews because the way they treat the Sephardic Jews and the Mizrahi Jews is terrible. And it's always been the case. So
yeah, it's a
very
colorist regime.
Thing. Yeah. So talk a little bit about like when you realized how bad this is.
Well, a lot of it was this sort of incidental engagement with politics online, not like a big reckoning in real life. But I guess one of the things that really bothered me, or that really weirded me out, was there was a sort of incongruence between the progressive rhetoric that we employ in basically all situations of racial segregation and apartheid, and the way stuff regarding Israel seemed to be treated. A lot of it was like the disconnect between what seems to be an almost universally held position in America, over the past decade or so. I mean, even before that, but it's like suspicion of war on terror rhetoric, right? Like any like, you know, in order to protect the freedom of our people, we must do this, security that. Like, people on the left in America are very suspicious of that rhetoric for good reason. You know, we remember the Patriot Act. We remember what was done in the name of that rhetoric. And then you hear just a ton of it, like the mainstay of it, coming from Israel and all of the sacrifices and all of the sort of political posturing done with indistinguishable rhetoric. So I think I saw that, and like it was pretty clear there was a double standard going on. Going online, of course, is a really, really, really bad way to learn about anti-Zionism, because a lot of anti-Zionists are also anti-Semites, and the two like get conflated really easily. So it was difficult, I guess, trying to find the right like carved out space where you had principled critiques of Zionism that wasn't just people like pretending that AIPAC controls the US government or something.
Right. No, it's very nuanced, and depending on what your demographic is, it depends on where you're allowed to go with the conversation, almost like where it's safe to talk about the conversation. And I mean, I've been being called out by a lot of my fellow tribesmen for my position on this, is, you know, and everybody, of course, is very wanting to take sides. Everybody loves sides. They have to have teams. Everybody wants teams. And I think that really what it comes down to is I feel like I know their sort of inside propaganda tricks and how they phrase things and how they say things, because now I see it very clearly how I was brainwashed by a lot of this. But I think it's so important to disconnect Zionism from Judaism. This whole, what is going on in Israel, to me, is one of the biggest causes of anti-Semitism that we have going on right now, because this complete conflation of Judaism and Zionism, and they are not the same thing. And I think that that is something that I spend a lot of time trying to do, is deconstruct that concept, because there are more and more Jews that are waking up, especially in this country, that are not happy with what's being done in our name.
Yeah, the association between Semitism and Zionism is really, really destructive for Jewish people, I think, largely because it implicitly sort of implicates Jewish people in the crimes of the government of Israel, which is obviously not good, you know, reputationally. Obviously, like, it's not as though Arabs in the Middle East were super cool with Jews, like, historically, but things have only been made worse recently. And a lot of that is because Israel is like a geopolitical like firecracker that's been thrown in the region. A lot of that gets displaced, and because Israel is always screaming that they are representative of all Jews, you get that back and forth. And obviously, like, throughout history, every time you see like a merger of state and religion, things get really bad really quickly. We're seeing it in India with Hindu nationalism, where you have this like synthesis between Hinduism as a cultural force and like the power of Modi's government. We see this in America right now with Christian nationalism being one of the preferred dog whistles for like modern day American fascism. It's just not good. Wherever this happens, it's just not good. It's just not, it's not good politics, you know?
Right. I'm not a fan of a theocracy or an ethno-state. I'm just not. I have come to the big epiphany, which I can't believe I didn't come to it a lot sooner, that in order to have an ethno-state, you have to commit an ethno-cleanse. And those two things go together. And that is something that is like, and I have since realized that I participated in ethnic cleansing when I was, in fact, over in Israel on a trip with Alexander Muss High School in Israel, which is also partially under the JNF, Jewish National Fund, for people who don't know. And I now know that places where I was planting trees were not really meant for us to be. And I now know that I was used as a tool of ethnic cleansing.
Well, to be fair, if everyone who got brought along on birthright was you know, march to Nuremberg for war crime tribunals. That'd be a lot of people. That'd be a
I know,
long
and
line.
this was before Birthright, right? So like, I actually haven't done Birthright. The name of it actually makes my skin crawl now. I find it so unbelievable. The caucasity of it, like that's what I sit here and think. The absolute caucasity, your birthright. Like, how obnoxious can somebody be? And now I have a son who wants to do it, but in his mind, it's just free trip to Israel. He's very practical. He doesn't care one way or the other about the politics, which is sad in and of itself. And so now I've just started calling it Clan Camp.
Oh no, I had friends who were like that. Yeah, because it is a free trip, right? So like a lot of them,
Yes.
I had friends who were like that, and they were like, you know, yeah, I went over there, and there were a bunch of dudes who were trying to explain to me how like this is my homeland, my birthright, and look at this culture, look at this history, we belong here. And I was just like, yeah, okay, cool. Where's the restaurants? And they just took like they just went over there, had some burgers, and came back. Which, you know, at that point, it's just travel on the Israeli government's dime, and that's as projects go, there are worse ones than that.
I suppose I just look at it as like brainwashing camp. And yeah, some people are resilient and are formed. Like when I was in Israel, I was 16. So I'd like to think that if I went when I was 23, I might have had a different perspective, although I don't know. You know, I don't know. We were much more malleable. And so they like that more. You know, they'd rather get you there younger.
I think
that's what they can work in.
I think more ethno-nationalists should do this. I think that white nationalists should have birthright, except it takes all European people to Kansas. And they like free trips to Kansas, and they're like, look at our culture, and they're like gesturing out at a cornfield or something. They're like, here, stay, make white children. Everyone just
basically, you think we should like basically colonize Kansas with all the white folk? That's kind of mean to Kansas. Don't they have indigenous people there? I mean, I would think that's kind of mean to do that to Kansas.
What about Minnesota? How about South Dakota? No, wait, they definitely.
No, I think Wyoming is where you got to go. First of all, that's the only state that I did not get a donation from when I ran for Congress. So there's that. And also, and I think it's a Dick Cheney thing. I have this thing, and Wyoming's beautiful. It really is.
But don't you like Liz Cheney?
No, I do not care for Liz Cheney.
All right, Wyoming it is then. I just think that should be like the default ethno-nationalist position too. Like Modi's doing this with all the Indian people all around the world. You know, just really bring it in.
But the violence abound. Like this, there's no way to do this anywhere where it doesn't end up ethnically cleansing someone else. That's my point, because it is the same thing in India, what they're doing there.
Oh, no. Yeah, certainly. Just people don't usually get free vacations out of it. I think. No, I'm just saying.
Leave it to the Jews to know how to really work the program.
Yeah, you guys just have the money. I don't know. You get the free vacations.
Jews have all the money.
Yeah, I was curious.
Over 3,000 Palestinian civilians were killed over the weekend. I don't think they're doing a very good job of protecting the narrative as they've been able to do in previous years. I think the marches and the demonstrations that have happened over the weekend, not just in New York, but all over the country in support of freeing Palestine, has given some hope that maybe this isn't going to end in a total genocide. I hesitate to.
I don't see how it can't. They have no water. They have like, how long can the people like I don't see how this can end any other way than hundreds of thousands of people dead.
Vaush, depending on regardless, obviously it's going to be a nightmare of epic proportions depending on how this unfolds. But do you see anything positive right now regarding any type of populist left movement, this anti-war sentiment that is so desperately needed right now? Obviously credit to the small faction, if you will, of the federally elected left in Congress, that particularly Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, who have spoken up very loudly that the president has to do something. I don't believe he will, but just the prospect of finally finding your sea legs a little bit and trying to create some type of I hate the word resistance, but that's the one that comes to mind. Do you see any silver linings right now?
I mean, the problem is that, like, okay, so basically no American government official gives a fuck about Jews. Like the Republican Party openly courts Nazis. They do not give a shit. Democrats are well, I don't think every Democrat politician is anti-Semitic, but I don't think they care that much. The problem
It's not their priority.
Right. It's not, the problem is that, like, because the shadow of the Holocaust still looms heavily over the political discourse, anti-Semitism is still a pretty serious accusation. Like the right can say, oh, I'm racist. Well, actually, I'm just anti-woke, whatever. Like, but that doesn't really happen as much with anti-Semitism.
But it's not us.
Right.
How can it be him?
It's a shift in like what the acceptable accusation is. And nobody wants to get called anti-Semite. The right can deal with getting called racist, which they do, but they can't deal with that. So everyone has to posture being super pro-Israel, super pro-AIPAC, which is why you see Biden trips over his dick trying to show everyone how pro-Israel he is the nanosecond the bombs start falling. And I know for a fact that quietly right now, Biden is like in the Oval Office absolutely seething that this is happening.
At Netanyahu.
Hates him. Yeah.
I know.
I know for a fact that if Biden could like finger snap reality into what he wants, like he would stop Israel immediately. But he can't, because that would open him up to accusations of anti-Semitism from the right, and that would blah, 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 election coming up. So it seems like the Palestinians are fucked. I think the best case scenario here is that basically there's like a mass exodus as the U.S. sends soldiers down to secure like a corridor open or like barters with Egypt. But even then, I don't know if that's going to happen. They opened up water down to the southern part of Gaza, which means that they might forestall. No, I know, right? Like, yeah, and Egypt has been like horribly non-compliant this whole time. But like, I don't think there are many paths to hope in this situation. No. I think there are paths with less death. I am heartened by how much the world seems to be consolidating around support for Palestinian people, in spite of the fact that the media is just nonstop throating like Zionist cock. And lying to defend them. So I guess my hope would be that this is a permanent shift in the public conscious, and this does make it more politically viable in the future for American politicians to sort of distance themselves from the worst of Israel's crimes.
Yeah, I would prefer some of them to actually be doing something about it. I've said it on many shows. Every single Jewish member of Congress, shame on you. Shame on you. Not a single Jew in Congress can stand up for this. And I don't mean now, just now. I mean ever. They couldn't even stand up ever on this issue. And it's as a Jewish person, I find it embarrassing.
Vaush, what do you make of, again, we really don't like talking about her, but, Wasserman Schultz is obviously at the head of the line with the likes of Gottheimer and a few others, Jewish, of course, what a shock. Who are basically saber rattling as hard as humanly possible. They do not care how many people die.
Oh, no.
And they are very much in the camp of, I had somebody who I will not say who, but somebody that, let's just say I know very well, that said, kill them all. Like, that's their attitude. Just kill them all.
I don't think there's anything fundamental about being a member of a minority group that makes you have better positions when it comes to other minority groups. The common logic would be that there's some kind of underlying solidarity that people would appeal to, but in reality, this is often not the case. In the ghettos, Latins, Blacks, and Asians fight each other all the time. Yeah. That solidarity has to be built, but it's a willful project. I think I think that a lot of that dies when you get into politics as well. There's just very little room to criticize Israel in American government because we've made the threat of anti-Semitism such a virulent accusation when it comes to electability. Because people pearl clutch so hard, right? Like even the lightest criticism of Israel gets met with everyone like, how dare you deny them their ability to defend their such and such? And it's all disingenuous. I don't believe any of them actually believe it. I think they just know that that's like a highly weaponizable accusation that you can throw around in Washington. So they use what they have on the table. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's pretty sickening to. Yeah,
well, I call them out as liars. Right, because you can't, if you're in Congress, and I've said it before, if you have access to information and you're somebody that is in a position where you like have access to that information, which really is everybody, but not everybody takes the initiative. But anybody in Congress at this point that does not acknowledge that Israel is in violation of international law, is an occupying force, they don't acknowledge the Nakba, like anybody that's in that camp is either being willfully ignorant or they're lying about it and they just know the truth and they're just lying about it. There is nothing else because the information is too readily available now. So there's no excuse for people that are doing that, especially in Congress. Are you willfully ignorant or lying? See, my congresswoman's, I believe she's lying.
Oh no, for sure lying. There definitely is like an overlying hysteria with regards to some people's fear of, I don't know, Palestine somehow wiping Israel off the map or whatever. There are people who like genuinely believe that shit, but I don't think they're the politicians. I think those are just like the Facebook moms who just share any bullshit they see online and are freaked out constantly over.
I have so much family in that category right now. It's so unfortunate. It's like you can't engage in a discussion with people that believe a mythology versus history. So you can't have a reasonable discussion with people when you're not coming at it from the same facts, and they do not acknowledge facts. So it's sort of like getting in a debate with a flat earther or a creationist. It's you're not, there's no point.
Well, we've had some pretty some pretty viral posts that were put out, particularly on Instagram the other day, alluding to what's been going on. And one thing you'll see from those who are Zionists is eventually they'll let the veil slip and they'll basically reveal that this is all of religious indoctrination. This is not, the opinion is not through reason, it's through emotion. And when that happens, you throw out all of the logic of, is this right or wrong? Well, I don't care if it's right or wrong. I care if it's what matters to me. And that's where the big disconnect is. And I think that that's what happens across the board. But this particular issue is very serious because there could be hundreds of thousands of people dead in a very short
I don't see how it's not going to happen. Even if they can get out, all you're talking about is setting people up in mass refugee camps that are going to be fraught with disease and like, it's just a matter of how slow the death is for people. It's not, are you getting bombs dropped on you, but it's, can you suitably raise a family in a desert without access to utilities? That's basically what we're talking about. So even in like, what's their best case scenario? I'm like beside myself. This is like, I know I'm like, just
the best case.
We're going to get you for Christmas. We're going to get you one of those Manscaped grooming kits. I'm getting you one of those grooming kits, man.
The best case scenario is not politically viable right now. The best case scenario is a shift in political viability. That's like the only that's what's on the table right now, which is nothing, which is suffering. I think a lot of this takes place in the context of the post 9/11 attitude that we have towards Muslim people, which is that a lot of people, not just Zionists, but just Americans and people in the West broadly, think that Muslims are subhuman. In America, it's mostly a project of like post 9/11 fear-mongering. In Europe, Western Europe, it's more recent because of the Syrian refugee crisis, where every government in Europe shifted to the right for fear of migrants who did nothing, who like you had like a year where Germany took in like 170,000 migrants and the crime rate were down that year, like just complete nonsense. But that's how people vote, on nonsense. People love nonsense. So like as a consequence of all of that, right, a lot of people just think that like Palestinians are animals, Hamas are just the more violent of the animals, and all the other countries in the area are just animalistic. You have Lebanon, you have Iran, you have Iraq, and they're just they're like a lesser people. And then you have Israel, a Western ally. And as long as people think that, as long as people believe that, basically anything Israel does is going to be justified in common discourse, because once you have sort of innately dehumanized the opposition, you have a lot more moral leeway. You're protecting something a lot more precious, and that has to shift. Unfortunately, there just aren't that many Muslims here in America, like proportional to the population,
right?
Which means that we don't have the same like cultural shift. There are Muslims and they're in the cities and such, but there aren't enough of them that it's leading to this like broad shift in people's experiential perspective on Muslims. And for that reason, I think you know, the attitude hasn't shifted as much as it could otherwise. You know what? Best case scenario, a corridor to Egypt, they flee to America, Palestinians enter all major American cities, and they end up sort of culturally ingratiating themselves and making people more pro-Palestinian just through adjacency. Like how we used to be racist against Italians, but now like every American has a little bit of Italian inside of them because we're a one
So
people.
basically, we need to feed people good Palestinian food,
Hey,
and then entice them
ass.
over to the culture. Well, I have a friend that's Palestinian, and so I do know that their culture is unbelievably cool and amazing.
I would say,
And there's a lot of layers.
We
to
need
it.
kebab. Yes, we need.
Well,
we
I
need
mean, we're
kebab.
just not taught that. Jews, we were really taught that Arabs hated us, and that they wanted to kill us, and that they just like we were really taught, and we were definitely taught that they were lesser, that they were less civilized, that we were taught that. And I don't mean me directly by my parents. My parents are pretty much as cool as you could possibly get for, you know, a boomer person. So I wasn't like specifically sat down and taught that, but that was the sentiment growing up in the second largest Jewish ghetto in the country in the 70s. And so that's what we were taught.
with little counter evidence offered, apparently.
Right. Yeah. As I said, you're not an expert on this.
The interesting thing that I think is important to note here, though, and if there is any silver lining to anything that Trump brings to the table, is that if you look at DeSantis and Haley in particular, who are, I mean, look, Lindsey Graham isn't running for president. He clearly would be number one. But the two most Zionistic, warmongering assholes that could possibly be running for president of the United States right now, they're not. It's not working to the extent that I think they were hoping that it would. For them to be so full-throatedly, we have to do this for Israel and we have to, take the fight to the Palestinians. I'm not getting the sense that that's where, like, the GOP energy is. Like, they're not going along with this shit. And I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that maybe we are turning a corner. Obviously, it's going to be devastating for the Palestinians, but I'm getting this impression that we're not as war hungry as we once were, especially compared to what it felt like when I was, I was 19 at the time when we were about to go into Iraq, and I felt my fellow college students around me were like, "Yeah, we have to go into Iraq." I don't get the impression that that's sort of the same energy at this point right now. I think we may have turned a corner in that regard.
Yeah, we're pretty isolationist leaning now. The American appetite for, like, boots on the ground in another country is basically zero. So that's good, at least. A lot of it is probably because the attack from Hamas wasn't on us. So, there's not that, like, gigantic irrational wellspring of bloodlust, which the Palestinian people are currently experiencing, from Israel. But our involvement here is, like, pretty limited, right? We've sent over 2 carrier strike groups because we want to threaten Hezbollah into not getting involved, project strength to Iran. And it seems that about 2,000 U.S. troops have been earmarked for potential deployment in an advisory and medic roles, like not soldiers, which is fine. I think that having U.S. soldiers over there, if nothing else, will put more scrutiny on the IDF, because I feel like those motherfuckers are doing war crimes like every nanosecond the camera's not on them, because they do it all the time when the camera's on them. So I feel like when the camera's not on them, they're doing even worse shit. Maybe having U.S. soldiers over there in an advisory and, like, medic capacity will make them behave better, because I don't know. I just feel like it'd be more difficult for the IDF to get away with that, like, adjacent to some, like, random U.S. some just 22-year-old from Iowa. I don't think is going to, like, stand there gleefully while the IDF does war crimes. At least they're less likely to. So I don't know. Maybe the scrutiny will be good. Could be wrong.
I would definitely agree with that. I wanted to let you know that I actually was in Philadelphia. I was just in New Jersey recently. I was in Philly for RFK's official announcement that he was running as an independent.
Oh, based.
I actually do think he's going to be a threat.
He got a press pass.
Yeah, I got a press pass. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, including somebody who was, I'm not going to say who it is, but was there and is a rabid anti-vaxxer and was proud to say that he was, and my kids aren't vaxxed. I'm like, that. Okay, man.
Great, nice.
I didn't know that that's a badge of honor that you need
apparently
to wear,
in that group
but
it
apparently,
is.
Oh, yeah, at an RFK rally? For sure.
Yeah.
You would be, well, that's the thing. You see, you got to go to these things to really get, gauge, like, where the audience is really at. And what I will say, because I was able to be at the rally, and then I was able to be inside this private, meet and greet event afterwards. And I would say that you definitely have more of the pro-business conservative type, but it was a mix. Like, it was definitely a mix of a lot of different people. You didn't really have the sort of anti-vaxxer crowd. You had a lot of Zionists in there, I will tell you that. You definitely got a lot of those guys in there.
Because he said up Rabbi Shmuley's ass.
Rabbi Shmuley was the person who more or less introduced it prior to the rally really beginning.
Gross.
What I will say, though, is that I think RFK is going to garner a lot of support, a lot more than people think. But his take, particularly on this issue of Israel-Palestine, is so bad. It's probably even worse than Trump or Biden, if that's even possible. And I don't take RFK to be a dumb guy. I think he's very smart.
So then what's with that? He's not getting money from AIPAC.
So what do you perceive as his strategy here?
What's his take on the issue?
Israel could do nothing wrong. They are a benevolent nation, and we must have them strategically in the Middle East.
He's just full on Israel talking points.
No, it's
no
almost,
nuance,
but,
nothing.
But here's the rub, Vaush, more than anything else. The biggest thing that he said, which to me is a non-starter if anybody's being objective, and you got to push your people that you support. You can't be like, oh no, well, my guy's going to lose. No, he specifically said that Gaza is not under occupation. He used those exact words.
See, that's a problem.
And when you talk like that, I'm sorry, but that's a non-starter.
I think RFK Jr. first and foremost is a lunatic. He might be a smart guy, but I think he's also a lunatic. I think another big problem for him is that he was pretty clearly inserted as like a dark horse wedge candidate intended to discontent Biden voters. Like, he was so obviously placed there in the DNC running to pull people away from Biden, and he kind of failed because he's crazy. And now he's running as an independent. I think he's going to pull more people from the right than from the left, so he might actually end up helping Biden. So, like, I think the problem is that, like, this might be an uncharitable characterization, but judging from what I've seen online, a lot of the people who like RFK are Nazis. They took a take that he had with regards to COVID being a bioweapon that doesn't target Jewish people.
Right.
And they ran with that along with some other very conspiracy heavy stuff that he believes in, because Nazis love conspiracies. That's like one of their main things. So I think the problem is that, like, the super far right community is kind of split on Israel, because there are the fascists who love Israel, because Israel is like a borderline fascist country. Netanyahu is objectively a fascist, you know.
Oh no, and his people around him, the two that are like the one who sounds like the Gestapo and
like
turning off the
Ben-Gvir.
water.
Yeah, they're like full on.
For
like,
sure. Oh yeah.
Fucking full on fascists. So the far right likes them, but the Nazis, of course, tend not to like Israel because, you know, the Jews. So I think that, like, there's a big split.
What to do with that?
Seriously, yeah. How do you toe that line? You actually see right now Trump is struggling with this, because there were groups of the super ultra far right who didn't like Trump being so openly pro-Israel back when he was president, and now he's been doing this wishy-washy shit where he's like criticizing Netanyahu, but he's still saying he's like pro-Israel or whatever. And I think it kind of reveals, like, the further right you go, the more you have to choose what kind of far right you want to be, and the more you have to choose, the worse of a big tent far right coalition you can maintain. And that's one of the big, like, harming elements of Israel when it comes to, like, the far right. They have a difficult time keeping consistent with that. So
yeah, well, you have to balance the Nazis with the evangelicals, because the evangelicals, they friggin' love Israel. Like, they can't get enough of Israel.
Well,
now, they don't give a crap about Jews. Jews just need to all be there in order for the rapture or whatever it is that happens. I don't know.
Well, the evangelicals are begging for the end.
Right. So you've got those. So when you're in the right, and I think that ultimately when Trump moved the embassy and he was really getting into it, I think that's what he was doing. He's courting the evangelicals. And so, you know, yeah, he's got some interesting combinations of people, but the majority of his people are not those people. They're regular people.
Yeah, the same is true. Like I said, from my observation, the whole RFK crowd was very much a hodgepodge. There was a lot of different people and a lot of different walks of life. But the one thing that I think is working in his favor, and rightfully so, is that people are really fed up with this system. They're fed up with it so much that it's almost like they really they just want to overlook everything to just say, well, this is different, so I'll go with this. And that's why right now he's polling at almost 20%. and Trump and Biden are basically polling at like 38% each. But when your choices are so poor, I mean, at some point you just got to wonder, what's gonna be that sort of breaking point. I mean, I'm not out here advocating for RFK in any way, but I want there to be some semblance of a shift within the system, much like when we're talking about a shift in the disposition regarding Israel and Palestine.
I think
people are getting desperate.
No, I agree. I think a large part of the support that he's getting is name recognition. I mean, his voice is a political non-starter just to begin with. Just totally superficial, leaving aside all of his crazy-ass politics. Like, that on its own is enough to disqualify him, which is kind of sad, but, it's also true. I think, like, it is kind of a testament to people's desire for, like, real populist candidacy. Donald Trump is inauthentically populist, but at least he reps the rhetoric, whereas Biden is as not populist as you can really get. He is very institutional. And there are a lot of Democrat and independent voters who are not happy with that and are kind of begrudgingly going with him, which is unfortunate. Obviously, Biden is far, far, far better than Donald Trump. So, it's still worth advocating for him over Donald Trump. But the DNC is not going to be able to win future elections unless they shift on this, especially because young people are the most aggressively left-leaning bloc and also the most populist bloc. So the more that becomes like the dominant decider for elections, like young millennials, Gen Z, even Gen Alpha, the more important it'll be to cater to that need for a populist representative voice.
I just don't think if you have no energy, you cannot win. And that is really the thing about Joe.
I don't see how he's going to win again.
He's also showing his age constantly, especially in this moment where you really need a leader who can just speak up and forcefully say that this cannot be tolerated. The way that he came out and said we're unequivocally with Israel, the way that he also came out and said I saw the pictures of the decapitated babies. It's like at some point you got to say this is not doing our country any good. And no matter how loud we scream from the rooftops, Joe, you're going to lose.
You're going to lose.
So please, for the love of God, step aside. He's not going to do it. And whether that's because he doesn't want to step aside or because the establishment, which depends on him for their careers, for the money, are basically telling him, we'll inject you with whatever we have to inject you with in order to get you through whatever TV interviews and debates that we're going to have to do. But to suggest that one can run for president without going around the country and holding rallies and meeting people, especially in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, I don't see that happening. I can't wrap my head around that notion. But I also think that the longer they wait, the longer it reaches that point of no return where now you really are stuck with Joe and you just got to hope and pray that it doesn't completely blow up in your face.
Well, we're definitely stuck now. If there was going to be another viable candidate for the Democrat primaries, they would have had to have been introduced and like meaningfully running over a year ago. Biden, incumbent candidates obviously have the advantage. It's considered kind of an insult to try to primary an incumbent. It's considered a sign of weakness. Biden obviously is not the strongest candidate we could have. So in a way that would be warranted, but we're kind of committed now. I think that Biden has a decent shot of winning, but a lot of it depends on how this Israel-Palestine shit plays out. It's kind of grim to talk about like the genocide of 2 million people and their ethnic displacement in the context of electoral favorability. Like, how will this influence the numbers? But
right, no, but they're looking at that.
But yeah, no, it is relevant, unfortunately. Yeah. And so like Biden's probably terrified of losing like a single point to people who are upset over his perceived lack of support for Israel. So that's probably motivating a lot of his ass kissing here, I guess. I think that absent everything else, if you take away the uncertainty of this particular conflict and just look at the numbers now, I think Biden has a pretty decent chance, mostly because Donald Trump is getting increasingly harrowed by the ongoing legal troubles. He can't afford to pay his lawyers. He has like a huge civil case coming up against him. He's had like his business licenses taken away. He's got like all this shit. Is like apparently even the GOP is getting bankrupted by it. Like the GOP has been allotting a portion of their national treasury to covering some of his legal costs, which is like, holy shit. Like my man is under so much pressure that he's not only bankrupted himself, he's going to bankrupt the party. And if that keeps happening, like if these trends continue, I don't think that Trump will be able to win. I mean, assuming he's even able to at that point. I think it's just going to take too much from him. He's been stammering a lot lately too, like getting weirder and weirder. The cognitive decline will catch up with him eventually as well.
Both of them.
No, excuse me.
Both of them. It's like a race to the bottom.
You totally don't know what you're talking about.
I have
mind. I'm totally the smartest, most stable genius you've ever heard. Don't ever accuse me of being like Sleepy Joe. Believe me when I tell you, we're sharp.
You're old.
And we are going to make America great again.
How excited are you guys for the upcoming presidential debates? Like two 80-year-olds. Come on, it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic.
Just throw your diapers at each other. At least then,
I don't watch debates because they're not real debates. It's just theater, and it's not interesting to me, and it's stupid. If bring the legal women voters back and have actual debates, I might consider getting back into that. But
what would you have wanted to see in terms of? I mean, if we're being completely objectively neutral and just going based on any of, let's say, the governors that are out there right now. Was there anybody in particular that you think would have been a suitable, sort of like Jerry Ford type situation here, where you can essentially have somebody step in for 24 and kind of, reshuffle the deck after the fact?
Yeah, the big poll a lot of people say is Gavin Newsom, but I fucking hate Gavin Newsom. So no,
that's their hope, though. I think that's their hope.
Newsom lost the Vaush vote, then he's in big trouble.
For me personally, it would have been Whitmer. If Whitmer could have gotten the ball rolling like a year and a half ago, I think that she has the politics, the poise, the passion. I think that she could make like a pretty formidable potential, but that would have been if things had gotten started before. If she just like flew in right now, like that would be maybe in 2028. I don't know. The field does feel like it's pretty stacked. I am hopeful about 2028 because regardless of what happens in 2024, assuming we still have a country and a democracy to return to, the Republicans will not be able to replace Trump. There's too much of a cult of personality. There's going to be like a black hole of personality when Trump. Yeah, like no one can. He was a flash in the pan, and he stuck around longer than we expected. Sure, but look what they did with DeSantis. They tried to like groom this guy into being the next Republican lead, and what happens? He's a fucking freak, and he sucks shit, and he loses, and everyone hates him. And I think like it shows they have no idea how to do Trump 2.0. So there are viable Democrats for 2028. But after Trump ages out or gets arrested or, whatever, he can't run in 2028, assuming he's not dictator.
Right. Like, well, no, he couldn't anyway. I mean, how old would he be? I mean,
no. He's like, this can't keep going on, right? But what are Republicans going to do after him? Like, really,
I don't know.
What are they going to do?
DeSantis is not the answer, and I am someone who has personally lost bodily autonomy here in Florida. We've been out nonstop, like every weekend, canvassing we have a ballot initiative that we're trying to get on the ballot to get our, bodily autonomy back. But even with that, and even if it passes, we're going to be more than a year in Florida. Right now, we're under a 6-week abortion ban. And for more than a year. And the amount of damage that's going to do is huge.
A huge shift of women over to the Dems, by the way. Great of Republicans to give that super, super easy, like, Dems have been campaigning on they're going to take abortion away for decades. Now Dems can campaign on they took away abortion. Much more effective emotionally. So
yeah, no, for sure it is. But, I think that when you look at states, when people choose, they're choosing their right to choose. Unfortunately, in Florida, we also have that 60% barrier that we have to hit in doing a ballot initiative. We already lost our 50.1% rights a while ago. It's amazing how people will vote for that. It's like they're literally saying, would you like it to be harder for your opinion to count? And people are like, yes, why I certainly do. I want my vote to count less.
Yeah. We're
sad here in Florida.
We're in one of those tough spots, but I will say that DeSantis's decision to pass the 6-week abortion ban is basically what blew up his presidential aspirations in so many ways, in spectacular fashion. I thought he was tracking for the White House, but his decision, and probably even not his own, something that somebody advised him to do, ultimately has turned everything on its head, because you look at all these states when they're having the opportunity, the reddest of red states, Montana, Kansas, Ohio, Kentucky.
They reject it.
They still vote red, but when given the opportunity to vote on a ballot initiative, even when they try to convolute it in such a dirty, tactical way like they did in Ohio, they still see through it. They say, nope, civil liberties, bodily autonomy, right to choose.
It's really it's hopeful in a lot of ways, because it's a reminder that no matter how skewed the political framing gets, it's just really fucking difficult to convince people to give up their rights. It just is. Like, no matter how, like, this is one of the reasons why Republicans are so overtly racist, but all the racism they do against, like, say, I don't know, Black Americans has to be in this really abstract economic way. Like, they're in favor of charter schools and they oppose this kind of urban renewal. Like, their policies are meant to capture racial animus, but people just don't respond well to overt taking away people's rights. And they did it with women. And as a consequence of that, like, it's, you know, it's like the dog chasing the car, right? They got there. Congratulations. There's no way to euphemize your way around an abortion ban. People know when they do or don't have that right. And now it's really fucking obvious to a lot of previously more or less apolitical people that, like, you know, last year, their daughter, you know, could have gotten an abortion, but now their daughter's knocked up at 17 and can't. And it is very easy to know who to blame for that. It's not abstract like inflation. It's not this big complicated system. There was one guy with a big red button that said "fuck over your life," and he pressed it. So, yeah, I'm hopeful for the future as long as we don't lose our democracy in 2024. That's my ruling going forward. I think there's good room to move here as long as that doesn't happen.
I feel like we lost it. I feel like it's been, I mean, we have such problems. And the biggest one is that we don't have a Labor Party when it comes to electoral politics. We don't have a Labor Party. And as a result, you've got like nobody really leading any sort of populist movement. So electoral politics from the perspective of any sort of populism seems kind of like, it's just not, that's not where it's happening. And fortunately, we're seeing really good things happening in labor. And really nice, you know, support for labor that I feel somewhat, you know, inspired by that. But until we have a Labor Party, it's hard for me because I don't, you know, and can you please clarify with somebody in the chat saying that somehow you're a Fed and you work for the Fed? Why, where did these things come from? But
I've been found out. Oh, shit.
Yeah, but guys, if he were a Fed, he wouldn't want to come on my show. Like, you know, why would you come on my show?
Well, to keep you on there, keep you in check. Keep an eye on
Vaush
you.
can't keep me in check. Nobody can keep me in check.
There's a lot of yeah, I'm actually doing this call so I can trace your location. We're getting the feed through now. No, I get a lot of shit because sometimes the stuff that I say is people interpret it as being a lot more institutionalist than a populist lefty should be. I think a lot of my takes are, I mean, everyone says this, right? So like, I'm not unique for saying this, but I believe a lot of my takes are motivated by realism, basically. So like the idea of what can we actually do and in what ways are we limited? A lot of people want like progressive power, populist power, this, that, the other. And I agree, you know, but we can't just snap that into existence. There's a process. We build the staircase, we build the ladder to get there. And the process of building that ladder is really unsavory because any actual engagement with politics, with like the process of politics and gaining power means doing stuff that feels kind of really cucked. Like Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary Clinton and then Joe Biden were both, in my opinion, very politically necessary and smart decisions because not having done so would have cemented a narrative of him being a detraction from Democrat power over Republicans. But it also feels really cucky to watch Bernie Sanders, a really cool guy, endorse Hillary Clinton, who's not a really cool guy. You know, not even a little.
Look what you've done. Look what you've done.
Boss,
so
if you're going to bring up my name, like I just have to come on here and let you know that we appreciate all of the wonderful things. Jen, good to see you.
Hi, Bernie.
All the wonderful things that you have done to try to inspire all of these wonderful people that are watching your live stream right now. I know there's you got a pretty big audience. Congratulations, you do a good job. I did not want to endorse Hillary Clinton, but one thing I have to come on here and say, and it's very important, we have to talk about this. When we talk about what has happened to the elections in the United States of America, we cannot deny what happened in the 2016 Democratic primary.
I donated both times. I was part of the solution, okay? Not the problem.
Thank you.
But we definitely have to understand that if we're going to save democracy here in America, and it's hanging on by a thread, we have to eliminate superdelegates. We have to have an honest electoral process. And we have to make sure that people understand that you can have fair and free elections, ranked choice voting, same-day registration, and frankly, why not just have open primaries across the board? I'm an independent. I think I have the right to say that. But in the meantime, great to see you. You're doing a wonderful job, Jen.
It's been a delight to see you. I haven't seen you since we met at that Tacoma rally back in 2020.
It was great to see you there, and I'm still fighting the good fight. And remember, Palestinian lives are just as important as Israeli lives. Don't ever forget that, and stick in the fight, each and every one. Have a good night.
Well, we're getting a comment. You might want to.
You got Bernie in your studio. Holy shit!
Isn't that cool? I always say we're small but mighty. We're small but mighty. So I wanted to ask you something totally not political. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've before referenced that you're on the spectrum. And I have a son that is not, but was thought to be, like, he's got a whole host of other issues, and a lot of his friends are on the spectrum. So I'm ingrained in that. How do you feel like that affects you now? How do you feel like that affects you now in terms of like dealing with people and like not just interpersonal, but especially being somebody online? And I think, to me, sometimes when I see people accusing you of things, I wonder if there's any sort of connection between their interpretation and you being on the spectrum. Like, I'm just curious.
I try not to attribute too much to it. Like, I make a lot of jokes about being autistic. I mean, I am autistic. The jokes aren't that I am or I'm not. It's jokes with that being the subject, because it can be easy, I think, to like over analyze one's behavior and attribute too many things. It's kind of like how nowadays, like, if you ask your average like college freshman about why they are what they are, there's like a million intersecting modes of analysis they'll go to, whether it be like their star sign or their horoscope, or like whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, or like what autistic, ADHD, whatever. But I think like people are people. It's always complicated. I think one of the things that I've struggled with when it comes to directly engaging with other people is that other people are willing to make, at least from what my perspective would be, so many concessions for the sake of getting along with other people around them. Will like have a political position, but they'll see other people around them have a different position, and they'll kind of like wiggle their way out of it to get closer to the group. And I'm, you say you don't understand why people are so disagreeable about me. I have argued with a ton of people on the left, sometimes on stuff that's actually pretty minor too. Like, not even, I've gotten into disagreements about stuff that I wouldn't even consider that consequential, but I like arguing. I think arguing is fun. It's a good way to find out where people stand. So I don't take it that personally, but I think a lot of people see stuff like that as a really personal expression of their like immediate social and moral worth, and that leads to them over investing in stuff and like shifting out of positions they might otherwise hold. And that's always kind of bothered me. I think that not an overcommitment, because that implies there's something wrong with it. A strong commitment to your positions, or like being bullheaded, is considered like an autistic trait, I'm pretty sure. So I think that carries through. Either way, it doesn't affect me that much, mostly, I think, because I really like public speaking. So getting good at that has helped me with the more like social elements of being autistic.
Well, I also think something that people often get offended by, and this is something that's hard for me in dealing with people, because I am a person of reason. You want to get emotional, keep that in your personal life. Keep that to your interpersonal relationships. People's feelings regarding policy, like how it makes people feel, is irrelevant to me. I don't care. I don't care about in my personal life. Yes, I very much care about people's feelings. But in terms of what is sound policy, I really don't care about feelings as much as I care about reason and what I care about. And that's something that you are always very good at, I think. And I think that rubs people the wrong way, when you're able to look at something very logically and reasonably, and it isn't necessarily as touchy-feely as people would want you to be about something. And I dig that. Like, I like that about you, man.
That's very kind of you. I'll take the compliment uncritically. I've certainly had my fair share of times where I'm just yelling at chat, but that's very fun. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
No, and you're very, very nice to me. That's the other thing. You're never yelling at me. You're never like, saying mean things.
So far, so good.
Well,
keeping it
part
going.
of it, I think, is age. I do think part of it is age. I'm old enough to be your mother, so I kind of think that there's this, and just different things. Like, we're not necessarily on the same generation. So I don't know. I mean, I think that you handle me with kid gloves. Like, maybe you're
I don't have
nice
you're just fun to talk to. You're agreeable. You're both agreeable. I enjoy talking to you. A lot of it is also like a poisoning the well kind of thing, because people who are, I don't want to say in my generation, but I guess like people who are younger or like around my age, there's a lot of like overlapping and interlocking social expectations that lead a lot of them to have a negative opinion of me before interacting with me. So when they do interact with me, the well is already poisoned. As a consequence of that, it's like pretty much guaranteed to go negative, no matter how the conversation would have turned out otherwise. So in the absence of any like initial well poisoning, I'd like to think, I think I get along with people pretty well for the most part.
I still find it bizarre that people just, and they take it personal. And that's the thing. People make it personal. It's not personal. I can say I don't agree with this take and not necessarily say I hate you and think you're trash. Whatever the case may be. And the last thing I really wanted to ask you, and this is also, it's political, but not topical. What would your thoughts be about the idea of a PAC that sole purpose is calling out corruption?
I have no idea how that PAC could ever keep itself from becoming corrupt over time. Or like making preferences with regards to what kinds of corruption it goes after. Like that would be really difficult in the long run, right?
No, I think it's actually quite doable.
Oh?
This is a brainchild and something that I'm actually working on and have put together some really impressive people that basically the goal is to fight back against groups like AIPAC and DMFI. Progressive people that run are not just fighting against the other campaign, right? We're fighting against the PACs. And I sat around this for the past couple of years and have really started thinking it through. And there are no PACs that basically counterbalance. So we're always fighting like 2 to 1, and it's very frustrating. And so there's a PAC that's going to be coming around called Citizens Against Corruption, the CAC PAC. And the CAC PAC is going to be calling out the most filthy and corrupt people in Congress based on facts. This isn't personal. This has nothing to do with their personal lives. This is actual based on where they, whether it's insider trading, whatever, where they get their money from, like just really making it clear for people to see. And going into 24, CAC PAC will be calling out the most filthy people that have viable challengers. And it'll basically act as a counterbalance to AIPAC. And that's basically what I'm putting together to do. And my ask for you is that something you might be willing to help us fundraise for?
Oh, I would genuinely, the genuine answer is that I would have to spend a ton of time discussing details and thinking about it. The immediate answer is that I'm always principally in favor of anti-corruption.
Right. Okay. All right, good. But you would be open to a nice presentation by people that are like running this.
Oh, sure. Though I have to forewarn, I almost always decline to get involved in projects because my experience is that they almost always go up in flames, no matter who's involved or for what reason. So my personal experience,
I agree on that.
Friends me away from stuff like that. Nonetheless, I'm always open to talk about it.
Yeah, and one of the big problems that I've seen, especially with groups like Justice Dems and Our Revolution and Brand New Congress, what ends up happening very often is that people are not very strategic in terms of how they go about trying to elicit that change. They spread themselves too thin. They don't realize how do you say bright eyes, big stomach?
Yeah, big eyes, small stomach.
Yeah,
that's you.
Well, I'm trying not to be.
Yeah.
But that is a lesson that must be learned, and it's not personal. When Jen ran for Congress, I knew that there were people in that room that stood out as candidates more so than others did. And it just so happens that 2 of those people who stood out were Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. I happen to know that being in that presence, that you can feel that energy. You know what I mean? You get a sense of who is actually capable of doing this, because it is not for the faint of heart in any way. But our system is so broken at this point. I don't know if it's broken beyond repair. Maybe it is. But if we are going to fix it, I think it's going to require a lot of checking egos at the door and realizing that this is not for everybody. And for those that it is right for, that you have to be very strategic about how you want to go after it. Because if you are not, as we've seen over the last few years, a lot of people that really were engaged, especially in 2015 and 2016, that bought into what Bernie was saying and what he did. And then you saw a few people get in after the fact, and there's a lot of people who are disillusioned, whether it is with AOC or some others. They just turn away. And not that they won't necessarily vote or engage, but to really be involved in the way that they would probably like to be if things were a little bit more transparent on the level. I think that they would be. And I think having trustworthy people that can manage, like a PAC like this, I think could go a long way. But that's obviously the big challenge.
No, it's challenging for sure. That's why it's not been done. And also, it certainly hasn't been done properly, and it most certainly hasn't been done affiliated with me. So that's you know, an entirely different thing. But yeah, no, this is something that has been in my mind for a while, that I've kind of been like working on and figuring out. But we need all the help we can get. Basically, I mean, it's like an uphill battle. It's constantly challenging an incumbent, being an insurgent campaign. We have, you know, there's so many things against us, and I'm just sick of it. So it's just about leveling the playing field.
Vaush, before you go, do you want the trifecta? Do you have any cute ladies in your audience that maybe would like to hear from Mr. Bill Clinton?
Nobody wants to hear from Bill Clinton.
Are you
Do you
sure
want to
about
hear
that?
from Bill Clinton?
I'm very sorry, but the average member of my audience was not alive when Bill Clinton was president. It would be entirely.
I have to say, that's even better. That's exactly what I want to hear.
He likes those younguns. It's so gross. It's so gross. It's so gross.
Dude, an entire committed 20-minute Gooner pedo neolib Clinton impression.
No, it's gross.
Vaush, I just want to come on here and say that, listen, the more people you have in your audience, the more likely that there's going to be somebody who's going to be desperate enough to, you know, accept my advances. So I just want to let everybody know who's out there that I was, in fact, president of the United States for 2 years, and I was not impeached in the Senate, only in the House. I have that distinction. It only happened to me once. It happened to, you know, Trump twice, so I got that on him. But I want you all to know that if you have any intention of changing this system to making it so that schmucks like me can't get super rich off of the corrupt and off the super corrupt system that we have right now, I can assure you, you are going to fail. And the reason I know you're going to fail is because the Clinton Foundation is still standing. Isn't that amazing? After all these years, we're still able to convince a bunch of suckers out there to give us their money because I have a lifestyle to maintain. And while I may not be going to private islands anymore, I'm still getting around and going to a lot of fancy places. We know you've been to the island.
Go away. I know you've been to the island.
I will not
painting of you as at least.
Issue. But Vaush, please give my message to all those young ladies out there. And remember, I'll take the 5 or a 6 and, you know, maybe in the teens, somewhere around there. But, you know, let's just keep it honest. I'm pretty desperate at this age. So just want to let you all know that do not fight the system. It's going to stay exactly the same way. Do not mess with my party. And believe me, don't mess with Hillary.
Nobody wants
then I'm
to
going to get
Hillary.
beat, and I don't want to get beat. So, you know, kind of.
Why can't you keep her in the house? Why can't you keep her? She needs the hook. We need to give her the hook.
Oh, hold on. That's misogynistic. Okay, she's a girl boss. You can't just keep her in.
I would say to anybody who had any relationship with her that was in the vicinity that could possibly lock her in a room.
Why do you think I'm here right now? I'm only here to remind people.
You're right. It was misogynistic, but you know what? Really, she's just got to go.
Well, listen. Every time Hillary goes on national TV and likes to remind people,
all right,
have to deprogram. It's not working out.
That's enough, Bill. He's nowhere near as funny as Trump or loving as Bernie. He doesn't have either of those.
No, he's gross. Values. He's lechy. Well, Bernie's the only one that doesn't make me feel like I want to move over when he puts that, when he gets into.
Trump is at least very funny.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to be standing next to him. He grabs him by the pussy. You know what I mean?
No, you
wouldn't
want to be next to him. Certainly not as a woman. With Bill Clinton's resounding anti-endorsement in mind, I'm absolutely open to talking about it in the future. But in the meantime, I have to spend 3 hours explaining to my chat how the Palestinians are doomed.
Oh, go ahead. Go chat about the Palestinians. They're not doing well. We had somebody questioning your numbers.
My numbers.
Well, that's what he said. He's that we're giving out
of my rear end.
But we had somebody saying it was false information.
In fact, I think I heard it on like MSNBC or CNN. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, whatever. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone,
it's been a delight to talk to you both.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. No, but I do want you to address that because I think that that's ridiculous that somebody said somehow you're being like giving false information. I don't
Guys, let me assure you that Palestinians, especially in the Gaza Strip, do not have weaponry. They don't have bombs, but they sure as hell are being killed.
And he's talking about regular people, not a small amount of people that are insurgent Hamas fighters.
Correct.
The regular people, the majority of the 2 million people. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about a small group of insurgents. So this is how I'll give you guys the analogy. This is the best analogy, right? Like, let's say, for example, that Mexico wasn't its own country, but was just something that we occupied and kept. We had a fence around it and we sort of just like kept people there. And let's say one day a militant group in Mexico decided to cross the militarized fence and attack a whole bunch of innocent people. That's what they decided to do. The small group of people that have been confined in cages broke free and attacked innocent people. And then it would be like if we then just dropped a bomb on Mexico City.
Yeah.
Like we're just going to drop a bomb on Mexico City. Now, granted, that's even being generous because, you know, obviously in the Mexico scenario, they're not encaged, you know, like but and they actually,
but here's
people here are trying to go there.
But here's this distinction that socially Mate wants us to, you know, again, no one is here defending Hamas.
No.
Like this is the fact that it even needs to be said is ridiculous.
But it does. So let me be very clear that I condemn all violence by Hamas, by everybody. And I'm never in favor of innocent people getting killed. That being said, I do think it's important to look at the context so as we can prevent it.
How did they come about?
Right. Well, because the problem is now what's happening is that when you've got Gaza having a population of 50% are minors or not adults. I don't want to say children because there's a lot of people that are teenagers. But when you have a population that size of that age, and this is what they're going through, then 10 years down the road, you have your next set of terrorists. Right. So I look at this from the perspective of you are creating more people to want to join the insurgency, to join Hamas, because they see no other option. They see no other option. And for people who look at it like, oh, well, they elected Hamas, they did. And it was, from my understanding, a fair election. And it was in 2006. And that's the last time they've had elections there. So it's not exactly what I would call a robust democracy. And it's like when we look at things that our government's doing that we don't agree with, can you and we have, you know, considerably fairer elections here than in other. I don't think so. But like, how can you hold 2 million people accountable for the actions of a very, very slim minority of people? And the reason is you don't. You just truly want to genocide them, and you're using this as the pretext to do so. Because there's no way that they don't know the percentage of people. What percentage of people in Gaza are Hamas people? It's got to be like less than 1%.
If you want to know how these terror cells and all these anti-American, Israeli organizations end up forming, this is going to be a pretty good insight as to why that is the case. And one thing to point out, which we had mentioned in our headline at the top, MSNBC anchors of Islamic extraction, Mehdi Hasan, and Ali Velshi, are no longer hosting.
Now, wait a minute. Now, we know that they are Arabic, but do we know that they're Muslim? They could be Christians. I don't freaking know.
No, they're Muslim.
Well, regardless, I don't think it would have mattered. That's my point. I don't think it would have mattered if they weren't Muslim. I think it's honestly the appearance of somebody being Arabic that is the issue more than the fact that they're Muslim.
So let's see just how bad corporate media actually is on this issue. You thought Ukraine was bad. That's child's play compared to this.
And so it's going to be absolutely critical for the Biden administration to put the muscle of the United States behind the president's words. You know, the president has talked about Israel's right to defend itself, and credit where credit is due. He gave a good speech. But the real test is going to come when those critics of Israel start to point their fingers and wag their fingers and say, guys, settle down, it's too much. That's when the United States needs to intervene to make sure our friends can finish the job.
عملية قصف جديدة طالت هذه هي الصورة كما تتابعونها الآن القصف مصور بها.
Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, a soldier all his life, has never seen anything like it.
This is a massacre scene. I don't have any other recall of memory in the history of Israel since it was established of this kind of event.
This is just a fraction of the weapons the Israeli military has recovered from Hamas fighters in the field. I want to just walk you through some of the items here. This is a thermobaric bomb. This is a weapon designed to create heat of up to 3,000 degrees instantaneously. And the Israeli military says Hamas terrorists use these to incinerate whole families inside of their houses.
Hostage rescue, which Israel didn't invent, the Brits did, but we certainly perfected it. You know, again, going back to June 3rd, 76, we brought back 103 Israelis being held hostage by Black September. We did it again in 1988 when we took down a bus, the first ever bus that was taken down in southern Israel. We took down the first aircraft. So Israel is no junior varsity when it comes to this. They are masters at the craft. As you have grandmothers, grandfathers, babies whose parents were murdered in front of them, being held up in the air by Hamas. And you've got civilians that are essentially placed throughout Gaza.
As a nation, rising up as a lion is against evil, and we will uproot evil so that there will be good for the entire region and the world.
As you know, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is vowing to eliminate Hamas. How does Israel define that?
So one has to understand what do we have in Gaza. We have a whole army of terrorists, whole army of vultures, whole army of inhumane, cruel people within civilian premises, within their own homes and families. They shoot their missiles at our children from their homes, from their shops, from their mosques.
This is a real issue. We need to unite and we need to stand strong. And remember what worked in Iran during the hostage crisis. It was not appeasement. It wasn't weakness. They waited. Reagan came in, and we got our hostages back.
But does that mean, does that mean starve the Palestinian people, continue to, because they will be so hungry and will be so desperate for water and medicine that then they will give up Hamas?
It sounds callous, but I mean, this is a war.
Sounds callous, but we have to kill them. That's what he's saying. It sounds callous, and we're cold-blooded bastards, but war is profitable, and we're going to make a lot of money off of this. And that is the truth.
I'm just sad.
A lot of money.
I'm so sad.
That should be the new line, Carpenter. It sounds callous.
It sounds
because
callous.
It is.
It might sound callous.
Not because it sounds it. It's because it is. It's heartless. It is completely genocidal.
Can I also say that the idea of even drawing a parallel between this and the hostages in Iran is absurd. Is absurd. First of all, Iran was not an occupied territory and like basically an outdoor prison. It was not the same relationship. We're not dealing with this is not the same balance of power. I am so tired of people drawing a comparison like this is a conflict. This isn't a conflict. It's an occupation. You have to have another group of people incarcerated in an open air prison to be able to compare it. This is not a conflict. There are not two sides. This isn't remotely even. And I always think of I have the image on my phone for anybody who knows we love Seinfeld. This is Kramer in karate class to me. It is. This is Kramer in karate class. And when I see these friggin' Ashkenazi white, like settler people that are sitting in the Middle East, basically just like sitting there uninvited, I might add. And they're just sitting there and they have the nerve to be talking about the people who are rightfully supposed to be there. And I'm just looking at these people and it's again, the caucasity, the complete caucasity of these people. It's infuriating. It's disgusting. And they absolutely 1,000% think of Arabs, not just Palestinians, by the way, as lesser than. When you hear them referring to them as animals, that's just par for the course. That's how they've talked about them forever. That is how they think about them. And for them to say it's anything else is just disingenuous. They have been looking for a reason. And again, to me, this is very similar to 9/11, where regardless of what your thoughts are on whether or not we participated in it, who was behind, whatever your thoughts are in terms of that, there's no doubt that we capitalized on it to basically do what we wanted to do anyway. And that's this, regardless of whether Netanyahu knew, regardless, like none of that is really what we're talking about. But this was definitely a pretext to do something they wanted to do anyway. This is not, they're not doing this in self-defense. This isn't self-defense.
The fact that Egyptian intelligence has been leaking information that is getting out there, and it's entirely reasonable to believe that Netanyahu knew about the Hamas attack 3 days before it happened and did nothing to prevent it, did nothing to sound the alarm. So you sometimes just have to wonder if these things are done intentionally. There were reports that the Bush administration knew at least a month, if not 2 months in advance, of bin Laden's intent to attack America with the use of planes. Yeah. This was known way in advance. And we all know what happened on September 10th, 2001, with the initial auditing by Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld with the Pentagon. $2 trillion in unaccounted money. And then the very next day, 9/11 happens.
We're, again, we don't need to go into how or why, but Metal wants to know, did Hamas dig up the water and sewage pipes to make missile fuselages? Maybe. What would you do if you were born in captivity? What would you do? I love when people.
Has anybody seen The Matrix?
I love when people say, like, and I do get this a lot from fellow tribes people here about, well, they dig tunnels. Yeah. How are they supposed to get out? Because I got to tell you, if I were born in captivity and were being raised in those conditions, not only would I want to get out, I'd want to go kill my oppressor. I'd want to go kill my oppressor, because the amount of people who are watching their family members suffer and their children die from things that would not be a death sentence anywhere else, but because they're living in captivity, the level of rage and anger that I would feel. And I look at so many people that are in Palestine, like people that I've seen talking on the news and whatever. I can't believe how gracious they are. I got to tell you, I'd be digging tunnels and shooting people and setting off. I would have been killed really early on. I'd be somebody that would probably be killed in my teen years. But I don't want to hear, did they build missiles? Hopefully. Because what would you do if you were born in captivity?
The good news is that there is some hope out there, and we're going to show you right now why. There have been marches all over the country over the last 3 days in lieu of Israel's invasion of Gaza.
Put up JVP.
JVP.
Jewish Voice for Peace. So guys, and we put it up earlier before, I don't know if you noticed, but Jewish Voice for Peace is one of the organizations.
No, that's all.
No, I put it in the comments, and then you had stuck it in.
No,
I don't know,
but that was like at the very beginning.
Okay, yeah.
So
all right. So we can put it in again. It's just jewishvoiceforpeace.org.
Okay.
And they are the organization. I'm a member. I encourage anybody who is tribe, who has any amount to get, it's $18 to join for the year, okay, to join Jewish Voice for Peace. But they're having regular, like it's been daily, Zoom meetings and calls and solidarity and really fighting. On Wednesday, JVP is having a huge action outside the White House. I wish I could be there. Honestly, if there was any way for me, I just found out about it yesterday, and if there was any way for me to reasonably do it, I would. But guys, Jewish Voice for Peace is amazing organization. They have a lot of good information, and you will have access to really cool meetings. So, and the truth is, you don't have to be Jewish. You don't have to be Jewish. Please support Jewish Voice for Peace. I'm a big fan. But anyway, they are behind a lot of these protests.
So here we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure where all of those locations were, but I'm just very pleased that is going on. And guys, yeah, Jewish Voice for Peace is it's great. And I'm sure there are a lot of really good other solidarity organizations for people. And, by all means, whatever your Palestinian, group, the people that that are helping, that's.
You know what has to happen, guys? Because tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are going to be led to their slaughter. There has to be a political price in this country that is paid for this. I am not sugarcoating when I say that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has blood on her hands.
Well, she does for so many wars anyway.
But this is something directly where she has made it very clear that she couldn't be more pro-Israel, as in kill Palestinians as humanly possible.
No, she is absolutely cheering on a genocide. These people are on the wrong side of history. They will be on the wrong side of history. I am very confident
when
in
they
that.
come out and say that we have to defeat Hamas.
Exactly.
But they are fully aware of what's happening. And they know. They're not stupid. They know exactly how these attacks are going down. They are not seeking out Hamas. They are raining death from above, which means dropping bombs on people indiscriminately. And who do you think is going to get hit? People that are not trained in tactical warfare, that are just trying to survive in a place where they can't go anywhere. They're just stuck. And we are people that are on the outside looking in. We are not people who are in elected federal office. Wasserman Schultz has been in the elected federal seat of Broward County, Florida for 20 freaking years. And the second she got to, this wasn't even an evolution for her when she got to Congress. The second she was there, she was as pro-war, pro-military industrial complex, pro-Israel as you can possibly be. And because her political clout, if you will, has been severely limited over the past several years, she really believes that this is an opportunity for her to gain political points.
It is. It is an opportunity. I don't think that that's the direction the winds are blowing. These are the people that are clinging on for dear life. These are the people that you saw towards the end of, segregation that just would not give it up. The people that were doubling down. It's the same people. I think when I think of Debbie,
it's like when Eisenhower with Brown versus Board of Ed. And the little black girl and
what I think of is
going to the University
of
Alabama.
But that's a different picture.
You saw the people
You're conflating two things. You're talking about the woman going to college versus the little girl that went to elementary school. Okay, so when I think of Debbie, I think of that angry woman shouting behind that black woman when they were doing the integration. And by the way, since then, she has actually apologized, and they had actually reconnected at some point. And that woman who was angry in the picture had gotten to a point where she realized how wrong she was. And I do believe that a lot of these people may come to that point, and unfortunately it will be too late. I have a certain amount of my own sort of like that I'm dealing with, and just being used as a tool for so many years for ethnic cleansing that I was. But these people are on the wrong side of history, and they are supporting a genocide. They are supporting a genocide, and which shouldn't surprise us. We've been supporting a genocide in Yemen since 2014. So this is just add another genocide to the list for these people.
No, it's like our empire is going through the death throes right now because they cannot stretch themselves any thinner. And look, for those who are in the chat, and for those who know that we obviously are very chummy with Vaush, there's a lot of things he said that I didn't agree with.
Oh yeah, it's not my job to convince him.
He thinks that President Biden is pissed off at Bibi Netanyahu. He's thrilled at Bibi, and you know why? Because there is a belief. It's a old guard. No,
I actually agree with him that he's not happy about this. Right
I don't know.
It's putting him in a very precarious position.
I understand that, but I'm going to explain why I disagree. Because it's always this belief that if you're a wartime president, that you line yourself up to be reelected in the most favorable way possible, as has been shown through numbers over the years. But this is not a favorable situation because the country is not bloodthirsty for war. I remember that basically all George W. Bush campaigned on in 2004 was that I'm keeping you safe. And if you switch from me, you might not be so safe. Maybe another 9/11 might happen. You never know. But if you elect me to a second term, I'll make sure that you're safe. And that's all he ran on. He ran on that, and he ran on gays shouldn't be allowed to have anything. And it became so effective that apparently Hillary Clinton thought that would be a smart move in 2008. Nevertheless, that worked at that time. It doesn't work now. Now, do I think that Biden is calculating this decision because he really knows the score? No. But I do think that there are people around him who think you have to be 1,000% behind Israel because this is going to help you take votes away from Trump, or RFK or whoever the hell you're going to be running against.
I don't think it's going to work that way.
I don't
though.
think it is either.
But I do think that
calculus.
he's not happy. I don't think this is something he wanted that whether or not, and again, I don't know whether or not we're talking about Joe personally or whoever the people are around him. Regardless, I don't think that his team wanted to be dealing with this right now. Their numbers are already very precarious.
How badly do you really think they don't want to deal with this when Joe is going to Israel on Wednesday? So
look, you're going to get your photo op where you can. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but I think that they would have just as soon not done this.
How are you going to go and do a photo op with Netanyahu on Wednesday when over 10,000 Palestinians are probably going to be dead by then?
It's amazing. It's like they're posing. You know what? These pictures, like a picture of Biden and Netanyahu during that time, that will be looked at like pictures of Hitler and people back in when we look at people that were war criminals and we look at, oh my God, how did people support that?
How do people even know that this is not going on?
Right. And we're going to say, you know, we do know it's going on. We are aware it's going on. And that's what that'll look like. Again, this isn't going to age well for them. They are on the wrong side of history. They are. It's just not going to age well. This will age well.
But like
a fine wine.
But like we said, there has to be a political price to pay for the people who full-throatedly support, not even tepidly, not even, well, Hamas is really bad. We have to defeat. It's like
go,
kill. Gadget copter.
Right.
You know?
But why do you think there's going to be some sort of reckoning? There wasn't for the people that jumped into Iraq. We still haven't reconciled that.
Because I don't think a lot of people are very strategic in terms of their attack.
Well, again, I don't know that there's ever accountability. The people that were on the wrong side of history with Iraq, because basically it was everyone but Barbara Lee in that case. So all of those people, there's really not been a reckoning. Very few of them, if any of them, have ever acknowledged, oh, you know, maybe we were wrong about that. And so I don't know that they're going to care about this anymore. But history will show all of these people, whether it's Debbie, whether it's Joe, whatever, you are going down in history as people that are conducting and participating in a genocide.
The one thing that is not going to be able to be walked back, and I do think that Trump in particular is bold enough to do a campaign commercial of this, he may very well do a commercial of Biden saying that he saw the decapitated babies' heads and he lied. And that is a lie. That's weapons of mass destruction.
I would have that playing,
level of a lie.
I would have, if I were Trump's people, I would have that playing on a loop.
That is weapons of mass
going
destruction.
Back and forth between that and that it was called out a lie. That and it was called out a lie, because you're talking about, and especially now that the right seems to be kind of like owning this anti-war kind of push more so than we ever see from Democrats anymore. This is just more fuel for that.
And that's the great thing about the GOP voting base, regardless of what Vaush thinks or anybody else thinks. They will literally tell DeSantis and Haley, we will personally make sure you lose because you don't effing listen to us. The GOP base voter treats it as we'll lose a battle in order to win the war. No pun intended. But that's how they see it. You think you're going to turn the GOP into the pro-warmonger party again of the days of George W. Bush? No chance. Not happening. And that is a testament to them. If that means
they're getting in the well, that's this is again where I feel like, and I said it to you, it's like we're 95 and the turnpike cross over and one's east or west. But like, I really feel like we're at this apex point where the Democrat and Republican parties are crossing over in a lot of ways. And this is one of those ways. I have not heard any real anti-war anything from Democrats. And I'm hearing some, not from everybody, but the little bit that we are hearing seems to be coming from Republicans. And this is not me just talking shit about Democrats. I would love for them. Medea, if you guys haven't seen Medea Benjamin, was on the show recently, and she was talking about, again, I cannot remember which representative it was, but the only congressional representatives that were asking Joe to basically qualify the support in Ukraine and just have an idea of what's the strategy, what's the exit plan. We're going to give you all this money anyway, but we just want to know what the plan is. And not a single Democrat would sign on to that request. Like, that's mind-boggling to me.
I also think that what Metalopoli is saying, as harsh as this is to say, but this is the mindset of a lot of people now, which is, I care more about Palestine, Ohio, than I care about Palestine. Yes, we get it. We have stretched ourselves so thin, foreign policy-wise, militarily speaking.
But we know that that's not the problem anyway, because we know that we could afford to do what we want to do with all of these things. And I agree, we do need to care about East Palestine. We've covered it. Obviously, we think that's very important. We cover, domestic issues all the time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's the beautiful thing. And if you watch any of our MMT shows, we can even pay for it all.
When Janet Yellen comes out and says we can afford 2 wars, that's what she said today. Credit to Mehdi Hasan, who responded to her by saying, yeah, we can afford universal health care too. And maybe that's a reason they don't want him on MSNBC.
Well, I could see that with somebody like, doesn't Ali Velshi support single payer healthcare? But he has for a while.
They're both from Velshi.
Are they Canadian?
Hassan is from the UK, and Velshi is from
Canadian.
No, Velshi's from Morocco, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he was Canadian. Yeah. Okay. Well, in any event, they're from places with healthcare. But, I think that it's really a very we're having a false equivalency with a lot of these things. Like that is just it's not the same thing. Like people are comparing apples and oranges. But regardless, we can do both. I can very deeply care about our infrastructure and poisoning. I have also said that everybody in East Palestine should just automatically be getting Medicare. Every single person in East, and anywhere where there's like an environmental disaster, people should automatically be getting healthcare for life. You can't fix the problem any other way. They're never going to be able to fix it. They can't clean it. You can't fix the soil.
Yeah, but if you
generations.
But if you start giving, and another thing that I have a bone to pick with Vaush, he was talking about Gretchen Whitmer. Now, the only person who I thought would have been suitable, if you wanted to have a, by the book stand-in Democratic presidential candidate that could have been able to be the standard bearer at least until 2028, that would have been Governor Pritzker of Illinois.
I can't get past any of the things in Michigan with her.
If you can't acknowledge the fact that she doesn't have one, she has 2 astronomical environmental crises on her hand, and she's done nothing. She not only hasn't done anything with it, she has completely swept it under the rug.
And therein, Metal, you and I agree perfectly. I agree.
Governor Whitmer
he doesn't care about us.
Has done less than 0 on Flint, Michigan.
And now you've got Kalamazoo.
And Kalamazoo, Michigan, is now experiencing, because of an unregulated paper mill, complete environmental destruction of the air and water of Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And I don't think people understand what this really does to the economy of places, because when you have places like East Palestine, and I've not been to East Palestine.
They all become Youngstown, Ohio.
Well,
that's basically what you do.
But what you're doing is you're not just affecting the people that live there. Because what happens is any of these places that have farms or produce crops and you have agriculture, when you poison the soil, what you're doing is you're poisoning crops for so many generations. And that's a huge problem. And I don't know enough about these cities in particular, but any place where you've got rural and you've got farms and this kind of thing happens. And I think of that in a lot of these places.
Yeah. And you know what? Multi-mind, there's a reason why I have always seen Rand Paul as more of a positive than a negative. And I know there's a lot of people on the Democratic side who can't hear that.
I find him to be, honestly, and a lot of times I think he's a wackadoo, but I I appreciate that he will stand for what he believes in.
When it comes to civil liberties and foreign policy, he is as consistent. He's more consistent than Bernie is. And that's saying something.
He is. He's been very consistent on those things. I will give him that. He is consistent, and he's also not a corporate whore.
Yeah.
So, there's something, again, I don't agree with him on a lot of things. But the things that I do agree with him on, I'm very appreciative that he stands up for those things.
It's the same thing with it. Listen, if I were to show you the sheet, the donor sheet of the representative from Eastern Kentucky, who has one of the best environmental records out of any representative in Congress, would you guess that it was Thomas Massie? You probably wouldn't, but
Peter likes Thomas Massie.
I do.
I know.
Because he's an honest actor. You don't have to like where he stands, and you can disagree with him, but he has told Trump to go kick rocks. Now, granted, he supports DeSantis, and I vehemently disagree with him on that, but that's also being part of the Freedom Caucus buddy group that they really love. But let me tell you, if you look at Massie's record, it's exceptionally consistent, and that is very rare. We don't have honesty in our government. We have
He probably is carpe diem. Rand Paul probably, I don't know what his stance on choice is. He probably, he's probably really libertarian on it and probably has no problem leaving the States. I don't know.
One of the worst
but
things
again, we're specifically commenting on a couple of his positions.
But one of the worst things that he did, Colanello, I actually would agree with that. If there is a state, I have always felt that the only and this is what makes Whitmer particularly despicable, because if there is one part of the country where the Democratic Party is strong and it does whatever they can in their capacity to serve the people of this country, it's in the upper Midwest. It's in the Rust Belt. And Minnesota is one of the very best, if not the best. And if you look at all of the legislation that they passed last legislative session, they did a fantastic job, and they had the slimmest of majorities in order to do it.
I want to point this out. Socially, Maddie, you're curious about what's going on in Flint. Maybe direct you to Status Coup. Yeah, Colin, when you get a second, will you put something in there that has the link or whatever so that we can, direct people? Guys, anything that you want to know involving like East Palestine and Flint and those, real issues, on the ground issues, check out Status Coup.
Yes.
They're on the ground in those places right now. They're really heavily involved in covering the UAW strike, but Jordan's been to like Michigan like 20 times. So this is a very big issue that they've covered, and they're probably the only people that have been really covering it.
And look, if you want to talk about who would be the best person to run for president of the United States right now, Sean Fain, head of the UAW. See, that's a person, if he was running for president, that would be the easiest populist left candidate to get behind. Easiest.
I love him.
He would be, if somebody could actually get in his ear and tell him, you want to really make an impact, that would be the way. He'd be...
I just want him to come on the show.
He would certainly do a lot better than President Biden spending 12 minutes at one of the picket lines saying, come on, man, support.
Well, what's worse, that or Trump going to a non-union shop and doing his speech? Don't shake the table. Really going to his whole non-union shop.
Listen, I totally support the workers, but the union people are terrible people.
Love Sean Fain.
They don't like those people. Union bosses are crooked because they don't support me, and I'm the best, believe me. So that's how I look at it. Yeah, Sean Fain is the man.
He's the man.
And that is, the audience has spoken.
I would love to get him on. We might be able to. I mean, it's not like outlandish. Like, it could happen.
We are a demonetized channel. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our wonderful, small but mighty channel.
And we are going to be doing, I'll do a crafty art auction. And
I
know, because there's no way to properly show it, bringing it here. You have to, there's no way to properly do it. Right. This is not functioning right now. I thought about it, but there's no way to do it. Okay. Right. It has to be done via pictures.
A $10 contributor is going to get one of Jen's.
No, we're not right now. We're doing nothing for that. We are demonetized. We are broke. We are broke. We are barely able to pay people that are helping us. So quite honestly, we need help. We're going to have to get
some social credit for our producer before long. I'm broke.
Well, right. I mean, we're not in a great way, just, and not that we were making a ton of money, but I was getting at least a couple $100s a month from our monetization that was going to pay the person that was doing our videos, which I haven't been able to pay.
But Jen has a theory as to why we were demonetized.
Oh, I know why we were demonetized, but that's neither here nor there. But the problem is I doubt we're going to get it back. And so quite honestly, Patreon is got to be people kind of out the kindness of your heart. Now, we do get some people that, and anybody who declines anything and doesn't even give me your address, I love you. I appreciate it. But I am totally happy to send out my Lulu stickers. And anybody, if you be a $25 patron, you will get the Jen Change jersey. And I'm happy to send out those things. That is merch that we do have that I'm happy to share and send out. But yeah, we be broke right now, guys. So we're really trying to
it really
get
accentuates the chest cavity in the biceps.
And what's frustrating is we're going into election season. We have some local candidates that I would really love to be able to support. And last year, 2 years ago, we were in a much better position, and I was able to make some decent donations to some good candidates. And this year, it's just not going to be able to happen for us through this. So it's difficult.
If you do not want to put your name on the grid, what you can also do is go over to Cash App, $Jen Change. any amount that you can contribute there really will make a difference.
It helps us. It really does. I'm just trying to, pay people to be able to get our clips out and do our stuff. That's all we're trying to do. We don't make money here.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why we like having all different types of political opinions on our show. Because even if you don't agree with everything that we say, we are not in this just to get clicks. Unlike somebody who all of a sudden decided he's going to run for president of the United States. That's funny. We'll see how long that lasts.
Well, again, can we point out the lunacy of the fact that it's somebody who is not natural born and that is already a disqualifier, and the ability to deal with that, although I do agree maybe that should be dealt with and evaluated, is a process that is just not on the table at this particular moment.
It's just not something to even be taken seriously.
Not right now. No, it just isn't. It's absurd. So that's why we're not talking about it.
We appreciate you, Ray. And even though you're rightist, we all have different opinions where I'm sure that there are intersecting areas that we agree upon. And that's important. Yes, there are multi-mind. Again, there is.
I think Savvy's at least still monetized right now.
Yeah, but there is a targeting component to what's going on.
But, and in our case, it was very specific. In our case, I do believe that it was just very much purposeful by my congresswoman that had us demonetized. I do.
Well, she doesn't like Jen very much, and
I
wouldn't blame her.
I don't blame her either. So that is what I think it is. I do think it's that personal. I don't think it has to do with our content. So that's why I don't think, even though Sabby and other people do put out somewhat like us, we put out content that would not be in line with establishment thinking. That's why I think in our regard, that's why I think it's personal, because there are other people that do, but they're not. So yeah. So even if we get remonetized, I don't think it's not hard to have us demonetized. All it takes is a phone call and we got demonetized.
Part of the reason why I try to be.
We can fight it in November. Apparently something can happen in November. I guess it's for X amount of time.
Part of the reason why I do criticize RFK to the degree that I do is because I want him to be a great candidate. I want him to do well, because if RFK does well, it forces the other two parties to come to that area where he's strong. And that to me means everything. That is his nickname.
Metal. That is awesome. I didn't know that was his nickname.
You didn't know that?
No, but that's funny. And I have, just to be very clear, I have no personal animosity or beef with Cenk. Never met him. Don't know him. He interviewed me, I believe. I think I've spoken to him before. I have no issue with him whatsoever. I am not involved in any of that drama or
just
nonsense.
Can't take this seriously.
Right. I mean, he is not a natural born citizen. And while I disagree with again, I'm not arguing whether or not that should be the rule, but that is the rule. And even though it could be challenged at some point, there is nowhere near enough time for him to do that where this would be something that is serious. And that is ultimately what my problem is. I have no problem with him personally.
If he thinks this is going to help him sell his book, he's got another thing coming.
Well, that might work.
Well, no, I don't agree.
You don't think it gets book sales just to have your name out there? All name recognition is good.
Maybe, but
he's not the only person running for president for book sales. So, it's apparently that's a strategy.
Well, yeah, it took me a second to catch that. But it's true. I'm running to sell a book.
Well, again, a lot of people seem to want to run a campaign, because what you're getting is you're getting free advertising. Whereas if you were just promoting your book, you generally pay. So it's sort of like you're getting name recognition on a grander scale than you would ever get if you were just paying to promote your book. And so, yeah, no, I think it seems to be a common thread among some candidates to be promoting a book and running.
That does seem to be the case. But in the meantime, we're very grateful for everyone who is here this evening. Some of you new, some of you consistent. It's always great to see everybody. Metalopoly, Notary, Multimind, Ray Infinity.
I swear I just saw the word bestiality in my chat. What the hell is going on in there, people?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Good God, people.
It has to do with Cenk. Let's leave it at that.
Ugh,
Teresa,
gross.
Always great to see you. Socially, Maddie, I don't recognize you, but you've been great in the chat, and it's great to have you here.
Yes, welcome.
Of course. Carpe Diem, great to see you. The chat has been long and winded. Ray J, always great. You guys, you keep it lively, and that means a lot. It really does. And it makes a difference in terms of how many people will ultimately see this.
But yeah, if you guys if every single person just shared us with one person, that would be nice.
It does that would make all the difference in the world.
It would be helpful.
Just make sure that every time we go live or a new clip,
every time you come on
redirect it.
live, you share that we're live with one person. That's helpful.
People get a copy.
Because honestly, more so than donating money would be helping us get numbers. Because that helps.
Rocco George looks like a new person.
Yes,
Great
and
to
I
have you
did
here.
point that out. And I also do like If Not Now. And I apologize that I didn't bring that up when I brought up Jewish Voice for Peace. It's just I'm a member of that, so I thought of it. But If Not Now is also a really good organization. There are some good Jewish organizations regarding this. There are
some good Jews.
There are some good Jews.
Smash that like button, subscribe, share, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you.
Wait, what do we have coming up
on Thursday? Don't know yet.
Uh-oh.
We'll have to work on that one.
It's like a mystery meet.
It's potluck.
It's so everybody, okay. So we're gonna do a potluck. You all bring your own guests.
Yeah. You have any recommendations? Email
You guys-
generationalchange@gmail.com.
I have some idea. Like, I mean, we have some people that we could definitely talk to.
Yeah, we do.
We have a lot of people we could talk to. I'm really interested in getting one of those 3 guys on that were just relieved of their duties at MSNBC.
We may have, well, yes, and I worked on that, and we'll see what happens. But whoever it's going to be, you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you like Vaush, you'll like a lot more that'll be coming up. Here's to the start.
Do we know if we're going to be day or evening?
Don't know that either yet.
You're really liking to live on the edge like that. I don't enjoy that. I don't like to not know. I like to know.
Be surprised. You'll enjoy it.
I don't like to be surprised.
We'll see you Thursday.